So now we're going to do this, I think we've done this 25 years or so, invite farmers that we admire to come up and talk their story. You know, we're all doing our thing. Some of people are doing it a long time, some are more recent, and we all have an important story to sell and share, not really sell, do we? To share for all of our edification and enjoyment. And every year we get excited about inviting folks and have a lot of conversation in our conference committee about who the people we choose. So these are selected from all of us in the family and the community to kind of focus on. So we have 3 farms represented today. Our first speaker is Sally Fox. Now, I've known Sally Fox since the early 90s, and I don't have to read anything to tell you about her. She is clearly a pioneer in a world that's dominated by men. That's the world of cotton. Cotton had been all about white cotton, and that's still the predominant thing. And Sally, who originally met when she was working growing biological control organisms, started off as a hobby and eventually became a passion, breeding naturally colored cotton. And really pioneered the whole thing and had to just literally claw to get that cotton cleaned and protected. And every farmer in the community had a hard time with her because she both was growing, my goodness, colored cotton that might contaminate their white cotton. And by the way, she was also a woman. Oh, Sally, you're so scary. But I do remember at the pinnacle of Sally's just rocket trajectory there in the 90s, I'm flying on an airplane, and who's on the cover of the airplane mag but my friend Sally Fox. So, and then Sally had to reinvent herself, and she'll probably tell you that story. And now she is a farmer in the Capay Valley, raising sheep and restarting up her colored cotton breeding program, developing these just absolutely fabulous colors that are all going to be part of the fabric of our life. It's not just old white cotton. We got to have all these different kinds of colors. So please welcome Sally Fox. All right. That's 20 minutes. I'm going to say you got 5 minutes left.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you want to tell yourself?
I'm
That's
doing
cool.
it myself.
That's the modern little thing you're going to use right there.
Okay.
You got a mic on, and that shows you what's on the screen.
Okay.
Go for it, Sally.
Thank you, amigo. Thank you. Turn this on. Okay. I can't tell you how honored I am to be standing here with all of you. I admire all of you. Every year I come and I'm out there and I'm saying to myself, oh, thank God I'm not up there. I'm so always happy to hear your stories. So I'm going to tell you mine, a little bit of it. Uh-oh, where's the thing? Can you tell me where the pointer went?
Good job, amigo.
I think I was supposed to. There we go. All right. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about how it was I got drawn into this cotton that I love so much. I worked, one of the ways I worked my way through college was teaching hand spinning. I'd started spinning when I was very young and got a spinning wheel for my 13th birthday, but was inspired by an entomology professor who came to my high school and convinced me to study entomology, to be part of the world of people that would go, that would offer to farmers pesticides that were higher tech and lower toxic, or not at all toxic. And so I worked at a company that developed the pheromones and the insect hormones, and I studied entomology, but I funded this by teaching hand spinning. And I'm just sharing you this because I spun and wove this back in the 70s, and inspired by one of my students who was an older woman whose daughter had been rendered brain dead by teaching textiles in home ec. She had dyed fabrics without wearing gloves, and her brain was ruined. And her mother was one of my students. And back in the days before we could look things up on Google, I was in the library at Cal Poly looking through books trying to figure out, well, who makes dyes? And lo and behold, it's the same companies that make pesticides. The same companies. And so I went on to this thing that I would never, ever spin, knit, or weave with anything that was dyed. I would only use natural colors of natural fibers, which, this scarf, the funny thing is I don't know why the San Francisco Zoo used to let me go and get, this is camel hair and yak and other animals, and I'd go back and pick up all the stuff and clean it and spin it, and so there's a lot of natural colors here, but there was nothing with cotton. Cotton was just white. So I continued on my path of working in science, and spinning and weaving and knitting were my hobbies, and I went in the Peace Corps. I came back. I went to grad school. I got accepted to my dream graduate program for a PhD in soil microbiology. That had become my focus. But at the last minute, there was this oath that women were expected to take then, that if they ever had a child, they would stay away from their job for no more than 2 weeks or some ridiculous thing. And I said, no, I won't do that. And so I didn't get to pursue that. And instead, I took a job with this plant breeder, a cotton and tomato breeder, who was rather eccentric, but he was an extremely talented breeder, and he was evaluating his tomato and cotton lines for nematodes and fusarium, various important diseases, and my job was to grow the vast vats of nematodes. And so I had to grow up big growing areas where we could test all the lines, and while working for him, and after I learned how to breed cotton, I found in a drawer cotton seeds that were colored, beautiful color, not just dumb white, but brown, the most beautiful color of brown. And we'll get to this next slide where when I planted, I asked him, first of all, the color was beautiful, but the fiber was crummy, in my opinion, as a spinner. It was short, it was weak, it was kind of rough. So I asked him, hey, why aren't we breeding this cotton? We need colors in cotton. Of course, who else? Nobody had a thing against dyes except me. This wasn't like a normal, this wasn't a common interest thing, but it was my thing. So he said, there's no market for colored cotton. And I said, why don't we make a market for it? And he was in his 70s, and he said, this is a great project for you. Why don't you make a market for it? You can have greenhouse space, and you can have these seeds. Just go for it. So that's how it started. And when I planted those first seeds, this is what I got. I got a mix. It wasn't like I planted a brown seed and I got all brown. I got all sorts of colors. And it was from that initial work that I needed to go from that to this. This is a commercially viable plant. And my little short amount of time left here, I'm going to talk about how I got from the mix of plants that were too tall to be picked by a machine and too unruly to be grown by a farmer to a commercially viable, usable, naturally colored, organic cotton. Which is what this is a picture of. A field of it that I just recently grew that is machine pickable and usable in commerce. And when you pick cotton, it's got to be, harvested by a machine, and you have to be able to make a bale. There's my first bale of cotton that way back in the youth, and the picture of brown and green seeds from the ginning. The gin separates the seed from the fiber, and the fiber represents about 30% of the weight of the product brought in. 70% is seed, and this cottonseed is critical to the dairies. Without the organic dairy industry, there would not have been a market for the organic cottonseed, and so we are very closely connected to the dairy folks. And a thank you for the morning breakfast, Albert Strauss. Cotton self-pollinates in general. 95% of the time it self-pollinates. This is the flower. This is a flower. Let's see if I can get this thing to work. Yes. So do you see this is the pollen, and there's the stigma. And if you did nothing, it would self-pollinate before the flower opens. To make a cross, this is a cross I made back in 1984. And the mother was a Sea Island, very long, beautiful, fibered white cotton, low yield. And the father was my first green that I had gotten that came out of the grandchildren of crosses of 2 browns. And in fact, out of 2 brown cottons, there were thousands of offspring in the F2s, which is the second generation after the cross. And among those, there were only 2 plants that had green cotton with 2 bolls each. And so they were very special. There are 2 species of cotton that are native to the Americas. They were domesticated by the breeders here, 4000 BCE, it's called nowadays. And the cotton to the far, this is Gossypium hirsutum, the one to the far right. Hirsute means hair, and that's the fuzzy-seeded cotton that most people grow. 90% of the world grows that cotton. 10% of the world grows this cotton to the right. Well, that's the left, the right. The right is Gossypium barbadense. It's a smooth-seeded cotton. It's what Pima cotton is, and Egyptian cotton is, and Sea Island cotton. And it's a higher quality, lower yielding cotton. And I bred, these 2 species are native to the Americas, domesticated here, and they quickly, a little funny story is that when Columbus showed up to Hispaniola, this cotton, the Gossypium, whoops, it's going too fast here, the Gossypium barbadense had just made it there. It was domesticated in Peru, and just 3 years before he showed up, they had just recently gotten this cotton in Hispaniola, and they gave him these seeds, both seeds. And within 100 years of his return to Spain, by the Silk Road, those seeds had gone into India and China and replaced the cottons that they were growing, because the the breeders in the Americas, 4000 BCE, had bred such a superior fiber for spinning. So that's why the world grows these cottons. They are easier to spin. I'm just going to show quickly some crosses I made. In this case, there's the flower of the barbadense and the flower of a hirsutum with the red mutant, which was what my greens had. And the F1 is the child in the middle. There's the F1. That's the boll open from that cross. And that was green that was very, very long in fiber. And here are just some pictures of breeding plots, which is how I do my work, which is how all breeders do their work. But the difference is I'm sort of it's been organic from the beginning, and that's why I became a farmer. So I was a breeder, but there were no organic farmers of cotton, and so I had to become a farmer myself. And but as Amigo pointed out, this actually was not approved of or welcomed by the cotton community. Mainly, I used to take it personally, like, oh, I must be some sort of horrible person. But then I realized, it's more that the cotton is a very low-value crop, and the industry is very, very risk-averse. These are just photos of my breeding plots. I use a lot of other plants in the field. One year, kids came and picked up all my sticks to mark my plots. So I started planting all these other plants with sticks. So I have milo and sunflowers and corn and all sorts of other plants. It makes it very fun and pretty. And there's a picture of my daughter standing at the end of one of the plots. Who's here? She's sitting here. Proud to have her here. And so the whole way to get anything new in new color, to find colors that are hidden, to find fiber strength, to find fiber length, all these things that we're lacking is with traditional plant breeding. And that's what I do and have been doing all these years. And these are pictures of flowers of the F2s and F3s showing a lot of variability. And I'm just showing them just because I think they're so pretty. I love to share that once you start introducing the opportunity to express differentiation, you get it. My gosh, you get so much variability, and it is so fun. It is so fun. Any of you who breed plants, you know how it's extremely addicting. This year, I taught a few groups of people, of students who were interested how to do this crossing, and this is just a little bit of showing them the crossing and then some of the other plants I grow in my breeding nursery. I got goofy over this glass gem and the Japanese striped corn. It was very fun. So I funded all this. In the beginning, I worked as a scientist and funded the work until I got the first commercially viable cotton, and then it was the cotton itself that funded all this. All this was interrupted by getting my cotton getting outlawed twice. I had to move from near Bakersfield to Arizona, and then in Arizona in the mid-90s, the legislature there got the idea of, they had enough votes to outlaw organic farming altogether in the state. And so the director of agriculture calls me up and says, we have to have a meeting, and then we sit down, and then he says, okay, the legislature is going to outlaw organic farming entirely, or we can just quarantine your cotton. I think I can get that through. Just that's really what they want. They want to get rid of you. And so I said, okay, and they said that I had to be 3 miles from anybody's seed cotton fields. But I was on a farm. It was a 2,000-acre ranch out in the middle of nowhere. I thought I was sort of safe. I had a partial lease on this property. And so what happens? 2.9 miles away from my farm, Stoneville puts in a genetically engineered seed field, and I'm not allowed to grow on this farm. And so I called Amigo crying, what should I do? I can't do this anymore. This is so preposterous. And he said, you need to go to the Capay Valley. That's where you need to go. So I went to the Capay Valley. And all these kids, let's give a hand out to the Capay Valley. And all the fabulous farmers here from the Capay Valley who helped me, I remain so grateful to all of you. Another hand, let's give our hands again to our Capay Valley. Thank you. I came this time, I was really heartbroken. This was a rough thing. I had gotten this cotton, I'd gotten out, we'd gotten thousands of acres of this being grown commercially, thousands of acres grown organically in Arizona, the hardest place to grow organic cotton. And boom, it's gone. I came to the Capay Valley, I continued my work, but now I was no longer funding my work with the sale of the cotton because no one was buying my cotton because no mills existed anymore. In the middle of all this, the big manufacturers, the Gap, Walmart, all these big guys had all decided that they were going to stop buying from U.S. and European and Japanese mills who had just invested millions of dollars into cleaning up dye wastes, which a funny little thing about dyes is the cost of a textile is minuscule to fiber. It's more the dyes. Like the cotton might cost 70 cents a pound. To dye it costs $1 a pound. To clean up the dye waste costs $3 a pound. So the largest expense is cleaning up the dye waste because the dyes are highly toxic. And the mills in the U.S. and Japan and Europe who I had been selling to, they were put out of business by the retailers switching to manufacturers in countries where they just dumped their dye waste. And so all my customers went out of business. So the Capay Valley time, I've been supporting the breeding work by being a farmer, which of all the ways of supporting my breeding work has been hardest, the least amount of money. So I've been not able to go at the speed of breeding that I had in the past. But I've had the joy of working, I just keep showing you the pictures of the cottons, of the colors, but I've gotten to be able to do other things. I've gotten to help reintroduce heirloom wheat. Sonora heirloom wheat came to me through Monica Spiller. Thank you. Monica Spiller had her plots on my farm one year, and I fell in love with Sonora, and I started growing it, and I started being like an evangelist for Sonora wheat, trying to get everybody to grow it. And then the words fell on fertile ears with Glenn Roberts, who got the seeds out all over the place. Native Seed Search, all sorts of people. It's being grown everywhere. And I feel proud that I was part of the revival of Sonora wheat. This is a photo, as I'm showing you these things, they're just showing you color and fiber length and strength, the issues that are important for the textile folks. Back to the slideshow here, this is how I used to catalog it, just in a little book with Scotch tape and names, and then it grew to a more sophisticated system of cards with fiber data, and the other interesting thing is the color can either wash away or get darker when you wash it. So there are all these textile processing steps that have to be made. And so year after year I'd grow out. I usually had 800 to 1,200 plots. And in those plots I'd make many thousands of selections and had cards for each of them, and then decided which one I would grow the following year. And so in this way I was able to make progress and get machine spinnable, machine pickable, machine washable, and wearable cotton that was in color and organic. And it's just one of these things. You do it year after year after year. And I started in 1981, and I'm still at it. And right now there's only browns, red, and salmon, and green. But I've only been at this 34 years. It's not very long. Each textile you have to test, so when I get a new color, I have to have it processed, and we have to run it through all the textile processing steps, and some of these things I can do myself, but most of these things I have to pay for people to do. And here's a shout. Here's a shout out to paper. We made paper. Yay! Can we and here today especially is the person that made the paper out of my cotton and had it out. We had organic cotton paper back then. So I'm going to have to make this quick and end it, which I hate to do. But I want to end it with, these were just fabrics that I've shown, that I've produced. I produced so many fabrics. Back in 1992, last points. The brown is fire resistant. The brown cotton is also a mordant, so you can use 80% less dye to get a color. Even me, Miss Anti-Dye, can see the value in that. And those things are very significant. So even if you don't like the color brown, you can over dye it and use way less dye, and you can enjoy clothing that is as flammable as wool, which is a pretty big deal. And I hope to continue breeding for white cotton that is also flame resistant. And then this, what I'm wearing and showing, is the first garment I've ever designed. Where this is the prototype. My black wool will be the black. This is just organic black, and my brown cotton that I'm wearing. But those are shout outs to the rest of the animals and living creatures on my farm, my sheep and the wheat and pasture, and I just got biodynamic stat. I just finally got my first biodynamic inspection. So, and this was a dear friend of mine that helped me in Bakersfield. Her name was Faye, and she helped me with my cotton in the very beginning and recently passed. This is a photo of my aunt, Vreseis. Her name was Vreseis. My middle name is Vreseis, and my business name is Vreseis Limited. So if you look up Sally Fox Google, you'll see this funny Vreseis. And this comes from my aunt, and I'm closing with this. In 1992, the president of Calgene, which was a genetic engineering company, the first one with any genetically engineered food, came out to my nursery with the president of Stoneville Seed Company, which is a big cotton seed company, to see my plot, to see my research. And She was a genetic engineer, and I asked her in front of, I had a student, and here's the president of the seed company, this cotton seed company. I asked her how she was going to justify the damage to the reputation of scientists, all scientists, when the business community and the general public figured out and realized how they'd been lied to about the safety of this technology that they were pushing. And her answer was, if we don't lie, we won't get funded. If we don't get funded, we can't do our work, and our work is the most important work in the world. So I close with you saying that I stand here before you proud. I've never had to lie. I fund all this by selling socks and yarn and all the things that are real. And so I thank you for allowing me up here and for supporting me by having me up here. And just know, I feel like the most important thing is to be honest. And all of us are. You know, I mean, I think that's something that all of us share. We share this love of being honest to our soils, honest to our plants, honest to each other, to our customers. So thank you.
Sally Fox. A true pioneer. That's my friend Sally Fox. And I'm honored to have steered her towards the Capay Valley where she could farm with friends and neighbors who weren't freaked out about a woman growing colored cotton organically. Oh my goodness, what a threat. And I got some great stories that I'm not going to tell. Anybody want to catch me and talk about Sally with or without Sally there? We can talk about some amazing stuff that Sally has been through. She is truly a heroine. Okay, so we are inspired to help inspire those youngins in this crowd as well. Sally's been at it for decades. We thought it would be really important to bring a crew up here that's relatively new to farming. In fact, as far as I know, this is their first farm. And they're young, and they're vibrant. And we thought that this would actually be an important component to share with you today. Teresa Kurtak and Mike Irving and John Vars are all partners in the Fifth Crow Farm. And Fifth Crow is located up in Pescadero. It's about an hour and a half north of here along the coast in a pastoral, beautiful, quiet area that is now pretty much, for good news, not being developed and actually being held by landowners who are interested in seeing it in agriculture. And a landowner or two has helped out the Fifth Crow Farm. They now are producing 30 acres of row crops. They've planted a 24 variety apple orchard, a young pear orchard, and a pastured egg operation consisting of 2 flocks of 350 beautiful ladies, all heritage breeds. They're very vibrant in their marketing dynamics, and I know they're going to share that. And I think it's really interesting and great to have a 3-way partnership up here to talk about that. And I believe Mike's going to hang with the baby, but maybe he'll come up for a bit and speak as well. But please welcome Teresa Kurtak, Mike Irving, and John Vars. That's the device. It shows there what you're doing. That's forward. Yep. That's you.
So we're pretty new to this. We don't have generations. It's so inspiring to hear Sally talk about her lifelong passion, and we're not that many years in, and we're also not used to giving presentations all that frequently, so bear with us. We need our notes, and we got nervous when we realized our notes weren't going to be on here, so we're going to switch back and forth a little bit, and my notes are over here. I'm going to move the slides forward over here, so if it's a little clunky, sorry about that. So we're Fifth Crow Farm, and we're located, can't see. We're located in Pescadero, California. Here's a shot of rush hour traffic at one of our 2 intersections. Oops. Is that forward? Yeah. We're at Pescaderos in coastal California. And here's some beautiful shots of the farm and kind of what our region looks like. It's halfway between San Francisco and Santa Cruz on the coast. And though we'd like to take pictures in the sunshine, this is maybe a little more representative. It's a really cool, foggy place. 3 of us started the farm. We're all graduates of the UCSC Farm and Garden program, which is how we met. Actually, Mike and I met at this conference, and he proposed at this conference. So this is John Vars, and Mike, my husband, who's back there with Charlie, and then myself, Teresa Kurtak. We grow, we operate on 80 acres, and 30 of them in intensive row crops. Probably over 40 crops if you count varieties, even more than that. We grow everything from beets and leeks to green beans and winter squash. And we market primarily via farmers markets. Probably 80% of our sales are to farmers markets. And one of the things that we've really focused on is super high quality at the markets. And we found that we've been able to build a lot of loyalty with regular customers. And instead of increasing the numbers of markets, we've just increased sales at the markets that we're at. So we grow, we're currently doing, did it go forward? Yeah. We're currently doing 6 farmers markets in the Bay Area. And we also operate a 200-member CSA. These are fabulous, reusable CSA bins that we just got via a grant. Our CSA runs 27 weeks, end of May through Thanksgiving. And we deliver to 10 sites throughout the Bay Area, in addition, we also deliver our farmers markets. And finally, our third marketing outlet is restaurant sales. We sell twice a week. We deliver to 12 core customers, including the Buy Right grocery stores. And here's an order of flowers headed to Buy Right. One of the things that's gotten us quite a bit of customer loyalty and a big following is our 700-hen pastured laying operation. We take our responsibility as our animal husbandry role seriously. And by taking that seriously, it's a win-win. The better we treat our animals, the better tasting the eggs, the more nutritious, and the faster they sell out at the market. That operation ends up meaning about 7,000. We were arguing about this. We actually think it might be significantly more than 7,000 dozen a year, but it's around that, 7,000 dozen a year. And even at that scale, it's not a very profitable venture, but it's still a very critical part of our business. And we do it kind of as a service to customers, and because it feels like animals are a really important part of closing the loop on the farm. Let's see. Another one of our specialties are salad greens, and that's sort of part of our climate thing. We didn't necessarily choose it, but it chose us because that's what grows well where we are. We grow a lot of loose leaf baby greens, and we also grow a lot of baby head lettuce. About 9,000 heads a week are transplanted and harvested. And, where am I? Did I skip? Yeah. So in addition, we do a couple acres of cut flowers, mostly bouquets. Though we also do bunches. We do about 300 bouquets a week. We also do bunches of sweet peas and ranunculus, both things that grow really well in our climate. And there are about 3 people full-time working on flowers, and another several who are part-time are part of the flower program. And in addition to that, we do dry beans, something that we started out small, and it seems to be a successful thing for us. We grow a couple acres each year, and hopefully this coming year we'll be probably doubling that. We grow over 13 varieties, and mostly cleaned by hand. And though not extremely lucrative, we found that it's been a great way for us to get into really good markets. It also attracts customers, and it's provided a lot of winter work and cash flow. There's some of our beans at the market. And finally, we have a 250 tree apple orchard that just started producing a couple years ago. Many of the varieties are also quite rare and unusual, and we don't currently have quite enough to satisfy our market demand, so it primarily goes to our CSA. It's kind of a special perk of being in the CSA is that every week from August through November, you get different varieties of apples in your box, most of which you probably never get to taste at a grocery store. It takes about 25 people, 30 if you include all our market helpers, to run our farm. And that includes a core crew of about 15 people that are year-round. Yeah, keep kind of that. And I'll hand it off to John.
Okay.
We'll swap sides here. And hopefully I can keep pace with your notes.
Okay, so we got an opportunity to start farming in Pescadero in the fall of 2008, and that was just time to be able to get in a cover crop and plant some overwintered crops, so we were able to hit the ground running in 2009. We didn't start where we find ourselves now, and in fact, the early days on the farm, we made do with some pretty rustic conditions. This was our first toilet, our first hot shower, and the office was okay on sunny days, but obviously this wasn't going to cut it for very long. The boots here represent our so-called shoestring budget, and we weren't going to take out any loans, and probably no one would have given them to us anyways, but we did pool together substantial resources, about $50,000 between the three of us, which meant that we started with a pretty solid foundation for a beginning farm. We were willing to take that risk because we brought to the business about 10 years of combined experience in a managerial role on small organic farms, much like the one we hope to start ourselves. And from the beginning, there were plenty of things to spend money on. We wanted to have an egg operation, so there were chicks to buy. And because we bought the chicks, we had to build a chicken coop. We were going to grow row crops, so we invested in this beautiful little old cultivating tractor as soon as we were able to, and built some and bought some key equipment that were within our reach with limited funds. We were starting from scratch in terms of infrastructure, and we needed a place to live, so we built homes that were within our means. And we had already grafted apple trees, so we immediately planted an orchard, which might not be the most business-savvy thing to do when you're starting out. But it was a labor of love, and who doesn't love apples? And it was also a powerful commitment, or indication of our commitment to the new enterprise that we had started, and also the land that we were growing on. To actually earn a little income that first year, we leased 10 acres of good flat ground and grew row crops on about half of that. Here you can see our first, most of what we first grew on that first year, as well as some of our initial investments, a hoop house and a shipping container that we bought for storage. From the very beginning, we were ambitious enough that we needed the help of others to do some of these projects. And when you were planting apple trees, we could get some friends to volunteer. But for the daily grind of annual crop production, we came to rely on 3 great part-time employees that first year, one of the first of whom was Victor, who within a couple seasons has recruited 2 of his uncles, his father, and a couple other of his friends from the local farm worker community. But in the first year, everyone who worked for us was part-time. That way we knew we had enough money to pay them, and we also did most of the labor ourselves. At first, we really only had that old blue tractor, so we were very fortunate that our landlord and neighbor, Gene Richardson, had other equipment that he was willing to let us use and rent to us at a reasonable rate. Here you can see a much higher horsepower John Deere pulling a spader, and there's Mike tilling in our first year's cover crop. It's taking a bite out of it to get us going there. Gene also was able to enlist some of his friends, like this backhoe operator, to help with key infrastructure early on, because living in a yurt's okay, but only if you have water and electricity. Whereas Gene's support was sometimes material in nature, his wife Donna was more of a moral support, often taking the form of sugar and caffeine, thank God. We wanted to have our own starts, so we built a simple hoop house, worked on greenhouse tables, and soon we had a greenhouse full of starts and plants ready to go to the field. We even had some healthy things already growing, and more importantly, things to harvest in that spring: sweet peas, radishes, leeks, strawberries. We were even getting eggs, and soon we were at the markets selling what we had and able to begin paying for the cost of ongoing business expenses with our earnings. Those first couple years were pretty much a struggle. Sometimes the rows seemed impossibly long, and our hours were equally so. Here's a picture of the truck leaving in the morning on a market day. Those first years, Teresa routinely did back-to-back markets, both Saturday and Sunday on the weekends. Leave it in the dark, work all day, come home at the end of the day, also in the dark. We abused personal vehicles. This van again was our first delivery vehicle. This is how we made it to market. We often spent a lot of time at the washstand after dark, muddy, cold, and hungry, but we were unwilling to let the work we had done in the fields go to waste by not taking it to the markets. We didn't pay ourselves anything the first year and very little the second, but this allowed us to save some money and reinvest because we were paying ourselves a stipend of eat all the produce you can, which is okay with turnips like these, but got better when we could afford cream cheese for our carrot cake frosting. Okay, our hands were sometimes cracked and dirty, but the product from our fields was beautiful, and we were learning how to grow on this land, and were able to sell what we could grow. Every year, the field started to look more vibrant and clean. The orchard that was once just an idea became productive. There were some changes along the way. There was a wedding. I met my wife, Maggie, another wedding. And this year, we were especially blessed with the introduction of 2 babies. This is my daughter, Hope Naima Vars, wrangling a sheep, and Charles Oakley Irving doing tractor maintenance. And due to a small miracle, they were actually born on the same day in the same hospital. We're humbled to be here and recognize there's many of you who are equally deserving, or if not more so, to be labeled successful. But we've reflected a little bit on our what we've learned and had a few things to share with you to hopefully inspire people starting out.
Amigo says we have 5 minutes, but I have the thing going here. It says we've only been going 14 minutes and we get 25, Amigo. So, anyway. He said good luck. Let's see here. So when we started, I don't think any of us really knew what scale we'd end up at. We just knew that we wanted our business to be around for a long time, and we wanted to be we wanted to be farmers for the rest of our lives. So we started on 5 to 7 acres, and each year we've grown incrementally, bit by bit, until finally we're on the 80 acres that we are currently, 30 of it in row crops. And we finally feel, after 8 years, that we're ready to make an even bigger jump. We just acquired another 52 acres. There's 52 acres, another 20-acre chunk, which will make us a total of 140 acres. Yeah, it's exciting. So, and our crew, which started out as just us, and then a couple part-timers, and then a couple interns the following year, got a little bit bigger, and a little bit bigger, until finally it's the 25 to 30 people that it is right now. And a lot of how we've sort of focused on growing incrementally, not trying to jump too fast, and investing, sort of constantly keeping a lookout for how we can improve our systems. Every year we work on, this is our chick brooder setup, which started out pretty rustic, and I think now it's getting more and more dialed in. These are treadle chicken feeders that we tried many different iterations and have ended up with these. We've invested a lot. We've rolled pretty much all of our capital up until maybe year 6 just back into the business, and invested in more equipment each year, more specialized equipment, improving our infrastructure. This was our kitchen, maybe year 2 or 3, and then more recently, greenhouses being built. We went without a walk-in cooler for the first 3 years, and then finally got a walk-in cooler. Then this year, we just acquired a lease on a neighboring building, a 7,000 square foot packing house, and have invested in a real big cooler. It's pretty great. We're pretty psyched about it. Throughout that time, we've kept a careful eye on the numbers, and we know we have to spend money to make money, so we've taken risks, we've invested in things, we've tried things that haven't worked, and let them go. And throughout that, one of the things that, every year there's been something that's gone wrong, and we've really focused on diversity of marketing outlets, diversity of products that we're growing. And even though every year there's been something that's gone wrong, this was the only photo I could find to represent it. We've kind of named the years by the things that went wrong. We had the year of the vole, we had the year of the birds, we had the year of the slugs, and then we had 2 years of drought, and we had the year of the babies, which was a great thing, but it's been challenging nonetheless. But in all that, every year, each year has been better than the last, and we've averaged a 40% growth in production and sales each year. And throughout that, there are a couple simple ideas, then principles that we both work by as well as use as a measuring stick for success. In everything we do, we ask these sort of basic questions that are sort of the precepts of sustainable agriculture. Is it ecologically sound? Is it economically viable? Is it socially just? Though in a crowd like this, it's sort of a given. We think of, our organic methods as a given. It's sort of an afterthought almost, because I feel like we're all kind of on the same page there. But we see our relationship with the natural world as paramount. We see it as an unquestionable necessity that we build versus mine our soil. It was always just a theory that organic practices build soil, so it's been really exciting to actually be in a place long enough and to take successive soil tests and see that our soil organic matter is going up. It works! It's exciting. And we continue to think of farming as a partnership between us and the natural world, and wildlife as our allies, and our farm is habitat. And the healthier our farm ecosystem gets, the healthier our crops are, and the healthier it is for those working in the fields and for the eaters at the end of the production chain. Oops. And in all of this, I think one of our greatest strengths has been our partnership. We've been so lucky to have each other, as well as the larger support network that we have. Because there are 3 of us, we've been able to put triple the brain power to each problem, and collectively give ourselves a greater set of skills and talents to pull from. By pooling financial resources, we've been able to get off the ground without debt. Because there were 3 of us, we were able to divide up tasks and grow a lot faster than I think we would have had we were just a sole proprietorship. We've also been able to share in the responsibility and burden of management, which has meant that we've actually been able to go on vacations and take days off. And in addition, we've been, one of the things I think is really important to accept is to be humble and know that to accept help when it's being offered. My sister spent over a year volunteering her Sunday mornings as our market helper. This is John's nephew, Ben, who came out for 5 summers in a row. He's now in college. Mike's dad helping out, friends, mentors. Oops, I got behind myself. Friends, our neighbors and landlords, Jean and Donna. Mentors, fellow farmers, partners like the NRCS and the RCD, nonprofits, businesses that went way beyond what their duty was as businesses to help out. Even our local UPS driver here, who spent hours and hours tinkering with old equipment while he was supposed to be letting his back heal. He said it was just too much fun. And of course, after a long, hard day, we don't undervalue the support of a furry and feathered kind. Growing it is only half the problem. You got to sell it too. And good news is that there are a lot of eaters out there who really value what we do. We just have to find them. Our neighbor, Dee Harley, in the first couple years of our business, said at a farmer appreciation dinner, she said, we are food makers and you are food eaters, and we need each other. And I oftentimes think, well, that's a pretty good foundation for community right there. When we started, we knew who our target customers were, and we knew what they wanted, which is part of the beauty of what we all are doing, because we are exactly what our customers are seeking. We don't need to greenwash our product. We just need to share our story, because it's not just produce that people are looking for. People are looking for community, a chance, connection, and a chance to have their food dollars have a positive impact. Whether it's at market or via our CSA, we feel like it's our responsibility to educate our customers. Every year we give people a chance to come out and see the farm because in a real estate climate like today, where there's so much pressure to develop open spaces for either parks or homes, it's really critical that the community sees farmland as valuable. And of course, it's not just about money, but just like any other industry, we want to be able to send our kids to school, pay for health care, take a vacation now and then, maybe own a home. And if we expect the next generation to want to farm, then we have to make jobs that people want. Our neighbor told us in our first year that it was going to be hard until we found the right people. And boy, was she right. It's been so critical to our business to find those right people, the kind of people who would put their heart and soul into the work just like we do, and also for us to do what it is that's necessary to keep those people on, which has meant investing in training people who are going to stick around with valuable sets of skills, and giving them more responsibilities. And our employees' rent doesn't stop in the winter, so it's meant that we've rethought the seasonal nature of our farm and invested in year-round production. Even though winter production isn't very profitable, it covers costs, and it's given us the added benefit of building customer loyalties and points with farmers markets. And it's been a really unexpected, satisfying part of owning a business to know that the farm isn't just supporting us now, but now supports more than 10 families with kids, not including our own. And it's also been a pleasure to watch former employees go on to start their own operations, hopefully finding experiences and skills that they found with us helpful. All of that's just a reminder that the means is also the ends. For us, what is success? Success is feeling like the business that we've created is doing good and building a healthier community and food system, as well as healthier jobs and a healthier lifestyle for those who work the farm.
Sorry, the timer went off. It wasn't you. My timer was wrong. My apologies. Teresa and John. Where's Mike, Teresa? Hey, Teresa, where's Mike? Well, Mike's walked off with the baby. I just wanted you to know, they didn't mention it, but Mike and Teresa, from all I know, are part of the crowd that fell in love at Ecofarm. So thought that you might like to know that. Our last speaker this morning, and then we're going to have a surprise, so don't leave right at the end. We have a little surprise for you. And we are running a little bit late, so please be patient. We had a little technical difficulties this morning. Which, by the way, we have the most awesome sound and video crew here. We could not do this without them. So James is the leader, and right before we started this morning, there were some technical problems, but otherwise we'd just be hours behind without their help. So I'm so grateful to our crew that does that. All right, our last speaker this morning is Peter Martinelli. Peter's from Marin County, right out by the coast, near Bolinas, Fresh Run Farm. And Peter is not only well known as a mixed diversified vegetable operation farmer, but also an environmentalist, and has gotten involved in his community in many different ways, including he's on the board of the Marin Agricultural Land Trust, which is really important in West Marin to preserve land, open space, as well as agricultural land from the heavy-duty pressures that happen in all parts of California. And he's currently the stewardship chair, and he's the co-chair of the Land Use Committee of the Marin County Farm Bureau, an activist as well as a farmer. Please welcome Peter Martinelli.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Great. Great. Good morning. It's wow, very inspirational talks. It was fabulous to hear about Sally's life work and revolutionizing the cotton industry, which is badly in need of it, and also the story of Fifth Crow Farm is really inspirational, and the amount of accomplishment you guys have done in a short period of time is really amazing. For me, this is my, I think, 24th Ecofarm conference, and as others have said, I'm used to being out there, and real honor to be up here. This conference is sort of a renewal for me. It's the time of year for especially us row crop farmers when you know, the money gets a little thin, the days are short and cold, there's not a lot of farm work you can do, and you start to wonder, what the heck am I doing with my life doing this work, you know? And I come back from Ecofarm, and that attitude's already completely shifted around, and I'm ready to get on the tractor, even though it's a little too wet to do that, and get going again. So it's a real sort of a rejuvenator to be here. So great thing. So we're going to talk about the farm itself. We're going to talk about the land. I think the land is really the star of the show. And talk about some of the things we're doing in little old Marin County. It's known for a lot of hot tubs and all kinds of sort of high-end things, but it's also a bastion of fourth, fifth, sixth generation agriculture, and there's some good reasons why it survived there, and we're working to keep it there. So Fresh Run Farm is located on Paradise Valley Ranch, which has been in my family since the 1940s. And there, for about the last 20 years, when I took over the leases on the property for agriculture, I've been doing developing organic row crops, vegetables, and fruit, trying to work in ways that are compatible with the local ecosystem. And through the years, it's been, every year is a little bit different. We changed things up quite a bit. Mostly marketing to, because it's such a small farm, it's really important to market that food directly and get that retail dollar. And as you'll see as we go through this presentation, I've tried probably every different model of trying to squeeze a little more money out of the organic farming market in order to make the farm financially sustainable. So like I said, the ranch was purchased by my grandparents in the 1940s. This is the old gate. My grandfather and grandmother both grew up in San Rafael. My grandfather's family, the Martinellis, were part of a wave of Swiss Italian immigrants. Came out to California around the gold rush time, and coastal California looked a lot like home to them. Lush pastures, and that's a very dairy-rich area where they came from. So my grandfather's family, actually his grandfather and his great uncle, founded a dairy in what's called Devil's Gulch. If any of you know Samuel P. Taylor Park, Devil's Gulch is up to the side of it there, and Mark and Miriam Pasternak they currently run that old homestead, and they do interesting things like vineyards and rabbits and asparagus, all kinds of really interesting production up there, Devil's Gulch Ranch. But just want to mention my family didn't stay in agriculture like a lot of families, generation. There was always this theme of, agriculture is a really tough, hard way to make a living, and why don't you, get off the farm and get a real job. And that theme kind of came down to my generation, and we'll visit it a little later in the talk. Just want to show you, instead of a map, I thought I'd pull this pretty picture I took on my phone coming off Mount Tam last spring. That's the Bolinas Peninsula, and as those hills ascend, they go into the Point Reyes National Seashore. That's our main neighbor on the ranch. We also have the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. Runs from the Golden Gate Bridge all the way up the interior Marine Coast, and also Mount Tam State Park. So Marin County has this wonderful block of wild land, a recovering ecosystems. Most of the endangered species, almost all of them in coastal California, are present and robust in our area. And our ranch is located right just above the sun there. And you can see Bolinas Lagoon, a little bit of water going up there. And so the peninsula is surrounded by water on three sides, which makes it a really great climate to grow in. You have the coastal influence, but because of the hills and the folded valleys, I also get heat. So I can actually grow tomatoes and things like that in the valley and yet be on the coast. I'm going to take you back to the 1950s. And after the family had acquired the ranch, my father and my mother were just married, and they decided they wanted to go in the cattle business. My dad had gone to UC Davis and studied husbandry and really wanted to be a farmer. And he died young, but that was one of his struggles in life, was to be a farmer, but never quite made it. And I think I picked up the ball when he left the scene, and tried to follow that dream through with him. Oh, love these things. Excuse me, first time with a laser is kind of cool. So, let's see. My grandpa's in the picture. That's him, the big guy with the arm there. My uncle's there, and that's my dad right there. And they're having a roundup on the ranch. Mom and Dad were raising Herefords at the time. And they were, before we get to describing the ranch to you, just want to say that one of the main features is Pine Gulch Creek, which is a coho salmon and steelhead creek. And when they developed that permanent pasture, they started pulling water out of the creek. And other farmers had been pulling water for a long time, but that creek is a major resource. It's considered probably the most abundant water-wise creek in Marin County. And they were able to do a permanent pasture and actually have a fairly intensive cattle operation. Anyway, that was their operation, and that's the sort of ag we had going at the time. So I want to show you the upper valley. This is the upper valley, and it's typical of a lot of coastal California kind of ag areas, little pocket valleys where you have sort of small farm situations. This area was intensively farmed back in the gold rush era. San Francisco is sort of an instant city. all of a sudden people showed up. They needed food, they needed wood, they needed for lumber, they needed firewood, they needed all these resources. Bolinas was among one of the first places. It's 22 miles as the crow flies from San Francisco, accessible by water. So it was one of the first places they came to get resources. And so these hills were heavily logged. All the Doug fir and the redwood on the east side of the San Andreas Fault were stripped out. And then they were intensively taken out with, for firewood to heat the new city. And then they were intensively farmed to feed the new city. And so here we are in the 1950s, and you can see that second growth forest is just barely getting a foothold. The land has been intensively grazed. That's an old farmstead that my grandparents bought, the first place they bought in the valley. And you can see the dairy barn is perched right on the creek, where the small farmers back in the day would flush the manure out into the creek. And there's no riparian canopy either. You can see the creek's just flowing through open meadow. It's pretty much exposed situation. Here it is today, and you can see the forest has come back strong. And the riparian canopy has reestablished all the way up and down the creek. And in fact now, as a farmer, I'm resisting the nature of this land, which is to want to reforest and go back to what it was. And this brush in the foreground is really the precursor to the forest. It's taking back over the grassland. It's acidifying the soil and making it so trees can pop up and the forest can come back. And in the environmental regulation climate we're in today, it's pretty difficult to keep land open. If you let it go and the trees come back, you can't cut down the trees when you decide to go back into farming in a few years. So you have to actively use it or lose it. So I've had to take measures to keep that land open and in operation. This is just another before after. This is the lower end of the valley, and same situation. You can see even a better view of how the upper hills of, that's now Point Reyes National Seashore in the way back, are all stripped out of their trees. This is today. And the thing about today to notice is the forest has crept in, but you can see my garden plots sort of sprinkled in between the forest. So I've got this rich relationship with the surrounding ecosystem all around the farm. And actually it's wonderful because I have robust populations of all the predator insects and predator animals that help me manage the farm. And I don't have an ecosystem out of balance and having to make up for that balance. I'll just point out the horse arena in the foreground, and just to say as a current trend that the big pressure in our area, all of Marin County, but especially Bolinas, because we look at San Francisco and we're 20 miles out as the crow flies, the big pressure is estate development. And we'll talk about that later when I talk about the work with the Land Trust. We'll get back on the timeline here. There's the 1960s. The cattle operation had gone out, and we had these row crop guys, typical of the agriculture that lasted well into that time, a little bit today, but most of it were these small kind of pocket farms, small farm operations. These three guys were growing artichokes. You can see the irrigation pipe there. They're pulling water out of Pine Gulch Creek. Also the Banducci's from Muir Beach. If any of you have gone up Highway 1 and you notice those beautiful heather growing this time of year, it's heather that's, talk about a naturalized, ecologically sound production system, except the Park Service doesn't think so. But the Banducci's were based there in Muir Beach, and in the 60s they leased our land. They grew stock and heather and iris and that kind of stuff. Let me get to the 70s, tell you a little bit about myself and my interest in all of this. I was really inspired by my father to garden. I think I'm one of those folks, and there are a lot of you in the room, I think that's going through all the different career choices. I just realized the farmer is what I am. That's just it. There's no other career for me. And you go back to, I think I was 7 years old when I first did my first planting. We were in a big nursery, Eggers Nursery, and over the hill where my family was living at the time. And my dad was out buying, I don't know, petunias or something like that to plant in the garden. And I'm in front of the seed rack, just like, wow. And back then they had a product called seed tape. And I think it was some kind of degradable cellophane product that it was perfectly spaced seeding. You put it in the ground, you follow directions, you water, and you get food. And I remember about half of that stuff, the carrots and all that stuff didn't work, but the lemon cucumbers for some reason just went crazy and went crawling into my dad's beds and took everything over, and I go, man, this is cool. It was a few years later. I'm about 12 years old here, and Dad and I always grew a garden together every year at the ranch. You can see the cattle are gone, or the artichokes are gone. The permanent pasture. That's the back area that I'm farming now. It's all just dry. There's nothing going on there. There were some replacement heifers, but that was sort of a downtime in the ranch agriculture. But for me, I was vegetable gardening right over the fence. And Dad had this scheme. He had a big thing against gophers. And he read somewhere this, I think in Rodale or somewhere, this thing where you could take rubber tires and put wire underneath them and grow your crops and protect it from the gophers. So we went around to junkyards and we found all these old tires. That was the queen of the garden there. That tractor tire was awesome. And we had some seeds from the old row cropping guys. They're an heirloom Romano bean. And so that's me standing over the Romano beans in the tire garden. It's just another view. Mainly want to show you that back there, that whole field is just dry, not being used, kind of a downtime. That's my grandmother, Genevieve, and she figured prominently in this story because both my father died young when I was 15, and my grandfather and my passed away as well, and my grandma sort of took over the leadership of the property, and very strong, awesome woman, took a lot of interest in us. But she was one that was really adamant about, I don't want you farming, get a real career, we're going to, you're going to a great college, that's her generation had that thing about, get off the land, get a good job. But she was also one of my best supporters. And just for contrast, you can see the artichokes growing in behind her there, behind the fence, that's 1960s. Here she is again. While she had that thing about farming, we have this wonderful tradition in the family about quality food. And she and her friends are standing there holding wild watercress that grew in Pine Gulch Creek. And that became one of my first sort of wildcrafting adventures as a little kid when we'd go out to the ranch. Grandma would say, be sure and go down and find me some watercress while you're there. So that was really my first foray into wildcrafting. Just some of the other wild foods I grew up eating, just kind of developing, frankly, a very spoiled palate for high-quality food. Those are cockle clams from the area. Prince agaricus mushrooms, which are a real treat. That's an important one. Those are steelhead trout from Cotton Pine Gulch Creek. It's probably from the 1920s or 30s. That's my grandfather's creel. And the way we were taught to fish was you brought a creel like that, you lined it with ferns to keep your fish cool, not warm from your body, because the creel's sitting here. You wrap them in ferns, and there's a very Spartan fishing pole in the picture. It's kind of hard to see it, but it's a major theme through this talk is these steelhead and these fish in this creek. Let's move it up and get towards the farm. In the present day, we had a very early organic conversion. We did a crop in 1975. My father did a garlic crop, and we sort of got hooked on the idea of organic. They didn't plant the crop correctly. For mechanical cultivation, it was 4 acres, but we heard about this guy down the road named Warren Weber, and Warren Weber farmed with horses. And he came in and saved the day with his team of percherons and actually was able to cultivate and save the crop for us. And it started a long-term relationship. I ended up working with Warren, and I think Rob Liptenberg's here. He and I worked together. Really got to know the organic industry in a really exciting time when it was more of a movement. And some of you, and along with Warren, were among those who really brought respectability to organic produce, innovation, types of vegetables that we hadn't heard of, and also just standardizing packaging and making the industry something that was starting to be paid attention to. As I said, I ended up working with Warren for about 10 years and learned a lot about the business. There's a couple of pictures. My mother's family was in Ag 2. They have a long tradition going way early days in Southern California, but when my mom was a girl, they still had land down there, and they leased to citrus growers, and some of the citrus labels. I love this one from their place at St. Patrick with all the snakes hanging out with him. So after 10 years with Warren, I went on my own, started my own farm. This was my first venture, was Paradise Valley Ranch Organic Gardens. And CSA was Fault Line Farms, combination with Diane Matthew, Mount Barnaby, and Dennis Dirks down the road. This was the rototiller days. I had to farm the peripheries. I couldn't farm the mainlands that Warren Weber was leasing, so I learned a lot farming these little areas. I tried to grow the wild watercress. I thought of calling it flying terrier watercress. You can see the terrier didn't like to walk through there at the time, so he'd go up and do that leap across there. And that was a big learning curve, kind of a mistake actually, but I learned a lot about just trying to impose human systems in a natural way, and there's a lot to learn when you do that. However, farming the periphery, I also learned how to tweak things when I grow crops. growing along the fringe of a forest in a not typical row crop situation. I found that I could produce fantastic greens in the middle of summer. They didn't need row crop covers. They produced for weeks and weeks because I'm on the fringe of the forest. Super flavorful radishes and carrots that out in the open field might have problems with nematodes. There weren't so many problems by the forest edge. There's the first packing shed. You can see I'm borrowing some boxes from the old boss. Speeding it up because they gave me a time thing here. This is one of the first years, and you see a combination of wild crafting, wild chanterelles. There's the watercress, chez Panisse. I got to know a number of the restaurants in the Bay Area as Star Route's sales manager, and they were very supportive when I went out on my own. And they loved the watercress, and they said, if you can grow the perfect radish, we'll buy all you have. So I was working on the perfect radish there. There's a Win. We're washing carrots, and there's some dry farm potatoes. We had a group called the West Marin Growers Group. It later became Marin Organic, and we started the first farmers market in Point Reyes Station. And in those days, I could do the whole harvest in the morning and still be at market by 9 a.m. Just want to revisit my close relationship with the steelhead and salmon in the creek. This was always catch and release, but I've just got a picture with my buddy there. Came up, I sort of reinvented the farm. There were other farms named Paradise Valley. It was a long, kind of messy name, so I tightened it up to Fresh Run Farm. And the metaphor is that every time there's a pulse of rain in the California coast, there'll be a new run of steelhead come up from the ocean. They're silver-sided and full of sea lice. I thought that's a beautiful metaphor for fresh produce, these fish coming in. You'll notice in the label I've got my dad smoking a cigarette behind the tree, because when he'd smoke a cigarette, I'd get to fish with the pole when I was a little kid. However, the label became a bit of a cult thing. I was in one of the Good Earth, one of those stores, and it was stuck up on a refrigerator, and I was just listening to these two guys, and I was like, man, I want to get one of those labels. See the guy smoking a joint behind the tree, isn't that cool? There's our friend, the steelhead. This is how I like to appreciate the steelhead these days. I mean, I still wrestle with them up on the North Coast rivers in season with licenses and stuff like that, but this is a steelhead in Pine Gulch. Another early farming days, I was approached by Sue Conley and Peg Smith when they opened Tamal's Bay Foods to do a produce stand. I thought, what a great way to do the retail. There's the stand. I also had to start bringing in produce from the wholesale market in San Francisco, the organic wholesale. I got to make some great friends. Veritable Vegetable, I know a number of you are here and still my great friends. Earl's Organic Produce, great supporters, produce suppliers, and also Greenleaf Produce. I know I saw Paula here. And these companies two things happened. I was bringing product from them up to Cowgirl, but I started a trucking run, bringing my own product for the stand. Just showing what's going on back on the farm. This is the guy Jeremy working for me, some of the farm guys. Anyway, back to the trucking. By 2000, Marin County, West Marin started to become sort of a mecca of organic produce, and I had all these restaurants and people asking me to bring them produce, organic produce, but also I needed to support the farm, and Warren Weber gave up the lease. I needed to figure out how to support it, so I started trucking 2 days a week, farming 4 days a week. You can see Warren's stuff was taken to his farm, but I had to build a pack shed. You can see it there, and had to buy the fences and improve infrastructure, tractors, stuff like that. Here the produce, this is farmer's market, got a little more sophisticated. Chard and kale are really a staple. Transplant chard and kale in May, and I'm still producing it in February, and that's just the nature of the coastal climate. This is a really cool system I'll show you. Daffodils, they were taken from a farm that was being sprayed with Roundup up in Sonoma County, and we just took the bulbs. We didn't know what they were, but they ended up being a really great heirloom type, and I harvest, there's wild nettles on the side there, and I harvest a whole strip for Cowgirl's St. Pat cheese. And what I love about it is, one, it's a wild crop. It's been going for 15 years, totally undisturbed, yet very productive, and I'm not tilling by the creek. Same with the daffodils. Sensitive habitat area, but we're not tilling, we're not hurting anything. Daffodils. Also following Mom's tradition of citrus, I ended up planting Meyer lemons that do really well there. So I want to talk about these apple trees. There are apples all on the fringes of the row crop farms. This is sort of in my crop philosophy. These apples don't get fertilized. They don't get watered after they were watered in as babies. They're let to go. They get their own water. They tap down. And it's just the appropriateness of the agriculture that it belongs there, and it does well without my care. And that's the kind of ag I like to do, when I don't have to do a lot of life support. I don't have to fight with nature. I don't pick a fight with nature. It wants to be there and it wants to thrive. And those produce heavy crops every year, very few issues. Pumpkins are a big crop. We did 100,000 pounds typically in a big year. We have an honor system patch at the Marine Country Mart. It's called the Honor Farm. Tomatoes in Bolinas. Watermelon in Bolinas. This is a great system. Those are those Romano beans that the old Italian guys gave down. I do them commercially, and it's the kind of crop that you really want because the people who buy them call me and they say, where are the Romano beans? And they're usually within a week of when they come on in production, and that's what you want. You want people to want your crop that badly. We have animals on the farm. The sheep aren't there, but I figured out the goats are up on the hill keeping the brush back. I'm definitely a goat guy. I like those guys. They do a great job, low impact clearing of the land. Tried the chicken thing, but the economics on that scale, 100 birds, you really have to have an economy of scale to do it organically. Though I did make a good friend in that process. He always liked to ride around up there. There are the wild nettles. People are a big factor on the farm, and good percentage of the people that work for me are local kids that want to learn about organic farming. Curtis grew up in Novato. There's a crew. Still good friends with Nay, and Fredo I don't see, but there's Jeremy in the background. Will came up the driveway at age 16 and said, I want to work for you, and that was about 8 years ago. He still works with me. He now has a farm up in Freestone doing an organic roadside thing. There's the crew in 2010. You can see Paige in there. Paige is here somewhere. I also want to point out Olivia is here, she worked on the farm back in 2003. Good buddy Peter Rudnick, after he stopped farming at Green Gulch, he occasionally has done some crops here on the farm. It's great to collaborate with other organic farmers. There's a lot to learn from each other. Nephew and niece having a strawberry. Kelly used to work on the farm. I kind of have an open door policy with people who work there. They come back and visit. Her son Tyler's visiting the goats. She's got her basket to go collect some chard. You do have bad days on the farm. That's before the tractor got stuck too and they sat there for 6 weeks. That's a lesson I'm still learning. Wildlife is an important factor. This pond was very desolate back in the 50s days, and now it's home to a lot of different species. It's actually in our land trust agreement. It's now a protected permanent habitat feature of the property. Mallards always have a batch. Babies. Wildcat, that's a river otter that started visiting the pond. This badger was last year in my sister's, who's here, in her garden. That was a quick picture my niece took before the badger hissed at her and she had to leave. These guys are great, these herons, and these are egrets here. They're great gopher hunters. They help out a lot. That's the spotted owl, the northern spotted owl. Owl box to encourage the barn owls. Just a quick thing here. I've been getting wrap-up lights for about 5 minutes now, but I'm almost done. I just want to say, opening the soil every spring, it's a really sacred act to me. That's not a natural thing. I'm upsetting that ecosystem when I do that. I have responsibilities to put it back, make sure it doesn't erode, to take care of it and maintain its fertility. I make my own compost. Cover crops should be nice and high, so you get a lot of organic matter. They should be at the flowering stage. We make sure to follow those organic fundamentals. Just take you through a quick planting. These are potatoes. I had to do this. I've developed this method so that they're dry farms, so that the heavy rain, if there is a heavy rain in spring, they don't get locked down and too hard. So we just kind of lay them in there, compost, lightly with a kind of homemade hill it, and it also cultivates it. You see, in 8 weeks, you still have clean rows. Those have not been cultivated except by that method there, and then you get a new potato crop. Do a lot of seed saving on the farm and developing varieties, making them stronger, adapting them to the farm. Off the farm, I did a project with Genentech to do a edible garden. Marine Organic is an outfit that growers group became. Fantastic. Marine kind of became a hub of the excitement about organic. We were afraid of the USDA standards coming in, and we developed our own standards. Quickly want to read them off to you that go around this little label. Grown without chemical fertilizers or pesticides. Grown with site-specific water and conservation practices. Protecting wildlife, a habitat, third-party certified, following community-based and socially just economic practices. And a group of great people and myself put together that statement. That was our early Marine Organic. Later, Marine Organic grew into quite an organization, and Salmon Safe from Oregon came down and certified our whole watershed, made us change some of our practices, but with the endangered fish, that was a big deal to get that certification. As Marine Organic grew and became quite popular under the leadership of Helga Hellberg on the right there, a very dynamic, energetic, and fantastic person, brought a lot of attention to organic movement, and Marin County was a great stage to do that. Here Wendell Berry's visiting the farm. He's interested, at that time they were interested in helping Kentucky agriculture become more sustainable. This was a fantastic day. Still don't believe it happened. I heard Prince Charles speak at Terra Madre 204, and a year later he's on my farm. I'm like, oh, how'd that happen? But hats off to Alice Waters to inviting him to Northern California, and also to Helga Hellberg for taking that tour and taking the lead in making that tour happen in Marin County. They chose Marin County among other areas in Northern California because of security. It was a close, easy place, and security was really the reason they came to us. Great honor that they came to me, Paradise Valley Farm, and also Warren Weber that day. Quick thing, we did a 17-year process to do off-stream water storage to stop all the pumping on Pine Gulch for the sake of the endangered steelhead and salmon, and finally realized that and broke ground last summer. There's Warren Weber on the right, and Dennis Dirks in the middle, and myself. There's the pond last week. It's filling up, so no more irrigation out of the creek, basically catching the winter heavy flow and diverting it for agriculture. Considered a model in California for dealing with our climate. I both sit on the board of the Marine Agricultural Land Trust. We've protected almost 50% of all the agricultural land in Marin County. You can see there's still small family holdings. It's just not a place for industrial ag to come in, so we've been very fortunate to preserve it. Also, our dairy industry, people, innovators like the Strauss family, have kept that agriculture viable up until this point where malt has come in to take over and help. And our easements have evolved over the years. Now we not only we delineate the habitat from the farmland and permanently protect it as perpetually recorded in deeds as habitat. Same with the farmland, and we also require that the land is used for agriculture proactively, and if it's not, the land trust has the right to find a tenant to use it, and this goes on forever. So that's one of the leaders in land trusts, and the first of its kind in many ways. And big achievement for my family and myself, we put an easement on the ranch, the first in Bolinas. I'm proud of my family because we took half of the appraised value in order to secure the farmland and be the first easement in Bolinas and protect the ranch forever and keep it as it is. And in addition, my personal goal to follow through with this is to protect. There's a vibrant green belt all the way around the village of Bolinas, and we are threatened by there are an incredible number of extremely wealthy individuals that want to buy land there. So my goal is to protect that green belt and put it under agricultural easement. Thank you.